Okay, you did it. You took a chance and you clicked on my video on how to make pickled beet eggs. Who am I? What kind of credentials do I have as a chef? I'll tell you what. I don't have any really, except for this cool chef hat. Check it out. Not only this chef hat, but I also have an appreciation for delicious, nutritious, affordable food that's got a long shelf life. Beet pickled eggs. They look pretty, they're delicious and nutritious, and they have a long shelf life, and they're not really hard to make at all. Hey everyone, I am FLEC the CHEF, and today we're going to make some beet pickled eggs. Yummy. I've been particularly interested lately in pickling and fermentation, as well as dehydration, and other methods of food preservation that don't necessarily rely on refrigeration or freezing foods. I have long-term goals of eventually getting off the grid and being able to provide everything for myself, providing my own electricity, energy, water, waste management, everything. I want to be able to live in harmony with my environment, and this is just another small step in getting in that direction. So we have here 2 jars of beet pickled eggs we just finished making earlier today. So my original idea was to pickle 12 eggs, but 4 of them end up being floaters in the boiling water. So when you put your eggs inside of a pot to boil them and you have any ones that float, that's a good sign that they're not as fresh as they could be, and you might want to consider tossing them. What are the other options? You can crack it open and take a chance and maybe smell a rotten egg. I don't know, it's up to you. I chose to just get rid of them and put them into compost. So instead of having 12 eggs, we only have 8 eggs, and the recipe was for 6 eggs, so we had to do a little bit of mathematics. Thankfully the math on this wasn't too hard, because I found a recipe that involved using 6 eggs. All I had to do was double it, right? Well, instead of doubling it, I'm going to just times it by half. So the 6 egg recipe called for 1 cup of water and 1 cup of apple cider vinegar. Instead, I used 1.5 cups instead of 2 cups because we have 8 eggs and not the full 12. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. We're winging it here. I'm not a mathematician, I'm a juggler. What am I doing in this kitchen? Where did I get this chef hat? Oh yeah, magic. Wrong hat. That's better. If you're anything like me, when it comes to learning recipes on the internet, I get really frustrated when you have someone who's talking too much in the beginning of the video and not actually getting directly to the recipe. It's especially frustrating when they use low-budget special effects and incredibly lame attempts at humor. Let's get started with the recipe, shall we? The first thing you want to do is pick your favorite way of making hard-boiled eggs and make between 6 and 12, whatever you're comfortable making. For this recipe, you will need 2 beets with the greens and the tips cut off and pre-washed. You'll need a dozen eggs, hard-boiled, 2 cups of water, 2 cups of apple cider vinegar, 3/4 a cup of free-range, locally sourced, grain-fed, non-GMO, organic, imported, fair trade raw cane sugar. Just kidding, regular sugar is fine. And 2 teaspoons of kosher salt. The first thing you're going to want to do is hard-boil your dozen eggs. For best results to boil your eggs, you want to place your eggs in the bottom of the pot. Then you want to fill it up with cold water about 1 inch above the eggs. If you have any eggs that are floating, that is a good sign that those eggs are not as fresh as they could be, and you might want to discard them. I had 4 of those eggs, so I took them out and put them into compost about halfway through the boiling process. You're going to want to boil your eggs. Once you notice that the water is boiling, you're going to want to remove it from heat and place a cover on it and let it rest for about 14 minutes. So after we hard boil our eggs, we're going to transfer them to a cold bath of water for about 14 or 15 minutes or so. Maybe even longer if you have other things to do. And if you don't have other things to do, what you should be doing is preparing your pickling juice. Now you can use cans of beets, but I prefer not to do that. I want to use fresh ingredients. Now it's time to cut up our beets. I like using my red cutting board so it doesn't stain my wooden ones. So we got those cut up, now it's time to put them in a pot. You're going to put your beets, your water, your apple cider vinegar, your cane sugar, and your salt all inside the pot. And now we're going to want to throw this on the oven and bring it to a boil and stir it to make sure everything's fully dissolved and that the beets get broken down a little bit from the heat. Now before we put the beets on the stove, it might be a good idea to heat your oven to 200 degrees and put your mason jars inside of it and bake them for about 20 minutes to help sterilize them. You don't have to do that, that's an optional step, but I like doing it and pulling them out of the oven so they're already hot. So when we put our eggs and our boiling hot pickling juice on the eggs inside the jars have less of a chance of exploding on you, which is not fun. If you don't feel like sanitizing your jars in the oven, that's fine. But what I would recommend is turning the hot water on in your faucet and warming up the jars with the hot water from your faucet. That way they're at a higher temperature and the shock of the temperature changes less likely to make them bust open, explode, or crack. These are mason jars. They're probably not going to do that, but safety first, kids. You might want to stir it every once in a while just to make sure everything's evenly mixed up. But then, once you add your pickling juice to the jars, you can go ahead and put the lids on top and set them aside until they cool off. And I did it all by myself. Po Buddy's Nerfect. I'm going to use some paper towel for this one. I don't want to stain any of my towels in the house with beet juice. Easy cleanup. Now we're going to take our lids and just rest them on top and allow the juice to cool down before we refrigerate them. The cooling off process is going to take a couple hours, and I have them sitting right here on my table right now. It seems as though they've cooled off quite a bit since earlier today, and they still got a little bit more to go. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and film some other videos and let these rest. And then before I go to bed tonight, I will put them inside of the refrigerator. And then about 3 to 7 days later, we'll check them out, slice them open, and see what we got. And now we are ready to open up the jar of some beet pickled eggs and give them a shot. Oh, I forgot my chef hat, sorry. Ah, that's better. So we've had this jar sitting in the refrigerator for about a week now, and you only really need it in there for about 5 days or so, but I let it go a little long. I had other things going on in my life. And I won't lie, I already had some from the other jar already. I just couldn't resist. Look at that beautiful purple color. Let's open one up and see what it looks like on the inside. Look at that, with the beets and the apple cider vinegar and the sugar. They all just kind of permeate inside of the egg and give it this beautiful color. And the flavor is, this is the part where I close my eyes and shake my head back and forth in slow motion. It's pretty good. Yeah, it's a good flavor. It doesn't really taste like what you're used to when it comes to pickled things like dill or even your sweet pickles, even though we have some sugar in here and a little bit of the apple cider vinegar. But it does taste really good. I love the beet flavor. The color is really, really cool too. It would look really neat inside of a salad to give the salad a little more color. Absolutely delicious though. I would definitely make more of these. As you would expect, the beet looks like a little red beet. And it tastes like a little red beet too that's been sitting inside of a jar that has water, apple cider vinegar, and sugar mixed into it. Just like I suspected. And there it is, folks, beet pickled eggs. I like them because they're delicious, nutritious, affordable, and with a long shelf life. There's a certain convenience too with being able to consume a larger amount of protein with minimal effort for cooking and preparation. Dishes are next to nothing too if you eat them right out of the jar or over your kitchen sink. I mean, I am a single guy with a cat, so maybe I eat that way more often than I'm willing to admit, but it's great not having to worry about making a bunch of dishes, and if you just need to satisfy your hunger and do it in a way that's good for you. Alright everyone, thanks very much for watching. I appreciate it very, very much. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Flex Frugal Foods, and I hope to see you next time in the next video. So on this one, the way I end all my videos, remember to never give up. Do your best, stay true to you, and be amazing, folks. Thanks for watching, and have a good night.